Big Ag doesn't want you to know that some plants are born killers. While they're selling you herbicides and telling you to spray your way through another season. Nature's already designed the perfect assassins. I'm about to show you 5 plants that do your weeding for no chemicals, no back pain, just pure biological warfare. And here's the thing, one of them has been quietly erased from modern seed catalogs because it works too well. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why your garden shouldn't be a battlefield you fight alone. Let's be honest about what modern gardening has become. Every spring, you're out there planting. Every week, you're pulling weeds. Every fall, everything dies, and next year you start the whole exhausting cycle again. The system is designed to keep you dependent, buying seeds, buying amendments, buying solutions to problems that wouldn't exist if we gardened the way our ancestors did. Here's what they don't teach you anymore. There's an entire category of plants that you establish once, and they hold territory for decades. These aren't your typical vegetables. They're perennials, plants that come back year after year, getting stronger, spreading wider, and most importantly, choking out competition without you lifting a finger. The industrial agriculture model hates these plants because you can't sell someone seeds every spring if their garden is already full. But the old-timers knew. They planted strategically. They let certain species do the dirty work. And those gardens didn't just survive, they dominated. What I'm about to show you are 5 plants that wage biological warfare on weeds using deep roots, aggressive spreading, toxic chemistry, and sheer territorial dominance. These are the forgotten soldiers of the garden. Let's meet them. First up is Comfrey, and this plant fights dirty from below. While your weeds are spreading shallow roots near the surface, Comfrey sends a taproot 10 feet straight down into the subsoil. Think about what that means. It's pulling up nutrients and water from depths that shallow-rooted weeds can't even reach. It's mining the earth beneath your garden and bringing fertility up to the surface. But here's where it gets aggressive. Those massive leaves create a dense canopy that blocks sunlight. Weeds germinate in the dark underneath and never stand a chance. And when you cut those leaves back, which you should do several times a season, they become mulch. Not hustani. Mulch. Comfrey is so rich in nitrogen, potassium, and trace minerals that it's called living fertilizer. You're literally composting in place while smothering the competition. Old-timers planted Comfrey at property borders because they knew it would hold the line. Once it's established, it doesn't move and nothing else moves in. You plant it once, and it produces for 20 years or more. That's not gardening. That's strategic territory control. If what you just learned about Comfrey already chase your garden, do me a favor bitten right now. I've got for more assassins to show you, and if you care about growing food without feeding the big ag machine, you don't want to miss what's coming. And go ahead and hit like if you think these secrets shouldn't be locked away in industrial agriculture's playbook. All right, let's keep moving. Next is one of the strangest and most effective weed killers you've never heard of, the Egyptian walking onion. This plant doesn't just grow, it walks. At the top of each stalk, instead of flowers, it produces clusters of tiny bulbs. Those bulbs get heavy, the stalk bends over, and the bulbs root wherever they touch the ground. That's how it spreads. That's how it colonizes. Now picture what happens in your garden. Year 1, you plant a small cluster. Year 2, it's doubled. Year 3, you've got a living, expanding mat of onion plants covering the soil. Weeds can't germinate under that density. Teruit. Systems interlock. The foliage shades everything out. And the whole time, you're harvesting green onions whenever you want them. Here's the best part. It's nearly impossible to kill. Freezing winters, it doesn't care. Hot summers, it goes dormant and comes back. Forget to water it. It survives. This is a plant that evolved to spread and dominate, and once you Give it a foothold, it handles the rest. The Egyptians weren't fools. They understood what it meant to plant something once and let it do the work forever. Now we're getting into the truly aggressive species, and this one has a controversial reputation. It's called Jerusalem artichoke, but it's not from Jerusalem, and it's not an artichoke. It's a sunflower relative that grows 8 feet tall and produces edible tubers underground. And when I say aggressive, I mean it. This plant spreads through tubers, and those tubers multiply fast. Each one you leave in the ground becomes 5 more plants the next season. Within a few years, you've got a dense colony that nothing else can penetrate. The tall stalks create deep shade. The roots form an impenetrable network. Weeds don't stand a chance because there's simply no room left. Here's the interesting part. Jerusalem artichoke used to be a staple crop. Native Americans cultivated it for centuries. Early American settlers relied on it. But somewhere along the way, it disappeared from mainstream gardening. Why? Because it's too independent. You can't control it with herbicides. You can't make people buy it every year. It just keeps coming back, feeding you and taking over space where you'd otherwise be spending money on inputs. If you plant this, understand what you're doing. You're unleashing something that will hold that ground for as long as you let it. Harvest the tubers in fall and winter, roast them, eat them, and watch the cycle repeat. That's biological warfare at its finest. Now, these 3 plants share something crucial. They're all perennials. And most people don't realize you can build an entire garden that gets easier every year instead of starting over. I actually put together a complete guide on 7 forgotten perennial vegetables that work exactly like this plant. You establish no replanting, no annuing, just long-term food security. I'll drop the link in the description if you want the full breakdown on how to set up a low-maintenance perennial food system. But first, let me show you the last 2 weed assassins, because these might be the most powerful of all. Number 4 is sorrel, and this one plays a different game. Instead of dominating through size or spread, it sabotages the soil itself. Sorrel is slightly acidic both in flavor and in chemistry. As it grows, it shifts the pH of the soil around it just enough to give itself an advantage. Weeds that prefer neutral soil struggle. Sorrel thrives. But the real weapon here is the foliage. Those broad, arrow-shaped leaves grow low and dense, forming a living mat that blocks sunlight from reaching the soil surface. Weed seeds can't germinate in the dark. Even if they do their root system, that's all reclaimed the nutrients. Sorrel grows in conditions where a lot of plants fail: poor soil, partial shade, inconsistent water. It's resilient, and that resilience makes it a perfect understory plant in a perennial system. You can tuck it into spaces where animals would struggle, and it'll hold that ground for years. Plus, you get lemony, tangy greens for salads and soups. It's food and weed suppression in the same package. This is the kind of plant that permaculture designers love because it layers into the system. You're not just growing food, you're building a living defense grid where every plant has a role. And now, the final killer, rhubarb. If you've ever seen a mature rhubarb plant, you know what I'm talking about. Those leaves can reach 3 feet across. They cast shade so deep that almost nothing grows underneath. But it's not just the shade. Rhubarb has a secret weapon. The leaves contain oxalic acid, which is toxic to most animals and plants. When those leaves die back and decompose, that chemistry leaches into the soil. It's a natural herbicide. Rhubarb creates a zone around itself where competition is suppressed not just physically, but chemically. That's allelopathy plants using biochemical warfare to dominate their environment. Once you establish a rhubarb plant, it can live for 20 years or more. It doesn't need much attention. It doesn't need fertilizer. It just sits there, holding territory, producing stalks every spring that you harvest for pies, jams, and sauces. And the whole time, it's doing your weeding for you. This is what I mean when I talk about working with time instead of against it. You invest the effort once digging the hole, planting the crown, watering it through the first season. After that, the plant does the work. Year 5, it's producing more than year 1. Year 10, it's a fortress. That's the perennial mindset. Here's what I want to know. Have you ever grown any of these plants? And if you have, which one was the most aggressive in your garden? Drop a comment below. I read every single one, and your experience might help someone else watching this right now. Let's build this knowledge base together. All right, so now you know the 5 assassins. But here's the critical part. How you deploy them matters. You can't just throw these plants anywhere and hope for the best. You need strategy. First, think about borders and edges. Comfrey and rhubarb are perfect for the perimeter of your garden because they stay put and create a boundary. Nothing's crossing that line. Egyptian walking onions work well in zones where you want gradual expansion, maybe along a fence or in a section where you're transitioning from lawn to garden. Jerusalem artichoke is your colonizer. Give it space where you want complete coverage and accept that it's going to dominate. Don't plant it next to delicate perennials unless you're ready to manage it. Some people plant it in large containers sunk into the ground just to keep the tubers contained. Sorrel fits into the understory. Use it as a living mulch, beneath taller plants or in the partial shade of a fruit tree. It fills gaps and holds soil while giving you food. Here's a technique the old-timers used, the living mulch border. You plant a perimeter of these aggressive species around your annual beds. They suppress weeds trying to creep in from the outside, and they create a microclimate that benefits everything inside. Your tomato is your pepper, your annual crops there, protected by a wall of perennial soldiers. Just remember once used moving vinga herflichive tembrum. Let them do what they were designed to do. Let's zoom out for a second and talk about why this matters beyond just weed control. System. We've been sold the one where you buy seeds every spring, fight weeds all summer, and start over every fall. That's not gardening. That's dependence. Big ag profits when you're stuck in that cycle because you're constantly buying inputs. But perennials break the cycle. You establish them once, and they work with time instead of against it. Every year, the roots go deeper. Every year, the plants get stronger. Every year, your garden requires less from you and gives more back. That's the opposite of what industrial agriculture wants you to believe is possible. Ancient food forests worked this way. Layers of perennial trees, shrubs, ground covers, vines all working together, all self-sustaining. Nobody was out there, tilling and replanting every season. They built systems that fed people for generations. You don't need a food forest to apply this principle. You just need to shift your mindset. Stop thinking in terms of annual harvests. Start thinking in terms of decades. What will your garden look like if you planted something today that your grandkids could still harvest from? That's soil memory. That's working with nature instead of fighting it. And these 5 plants are your entry point into that way of thinking. Now, if you want to go deeper into this whole perennial approach, I'm building out a complete resource library on the Hidden Soil blog. Right now, I'm adding breakdowns on soil preparation, companion strategies, and the science behind why these plants dominate. It's all free links in the description. Bookmark it because I'm adding new content regularly. Let's recap what we covered. Comfrey deep roots and living fertilizer that smothers competition from below. Egyptian walking onion self-propagating ground cover that spreads and holds territory. Jerusalem Artichoke aggressive colonizer that creates impenetrable zones. Sorrel acidic saboteur that thrives where weeds struggle. And rhubarb toxic territory holder with 20 years staying power. These plants don't just stay dominate. And the reason you don't hear about them in mainstream gardening advice is because they make you too independent. You can't sell someone a solution if they've already solved the problem. If you're ready to stop replanting every spring and start building a garden that works for you instead of the other way around, check out that perennial vegetable guide I mentioned earlier. It's in the description. 7 plants, full breakdowns, and a complete system for long-term food security. Here's the final thought I want to leave you with. Nature already designed the perfect weed killers. You just have to let them do what they were born to do. Stop fighting, start planting strategically. And watch your garden become something that gets easier, not harder, every single year. Thanks for watching Hidden Soil. I'll see you in the next one.